Hello and welcome to WSPA Plus 7 News is your local election headquarters. We are interviewing all of the several candidates for Spartanburg County Sheriff. I'm joined with me today. We have Bill Rhyne. Thank you so much for coming on to chat with us. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Are you ready to get into some of the questions?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so first and foremost, before we get into that, can you kind of tell me about yourself?
Yeah, so I was born and raised here in Spartanburg County. Graduated from Chapman High School in 1993. I was born up in that Inman, Holly Springs community. After I got out of high school, I went to the United States Marine Corps. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I went to work with Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office in 1996. Was actually hired in December of 95, but didn't start till 96 because I had to wait until I turned 21 years old. I stayed at the Sheriff's Office, worked in community policing full-time basically because the very first community policing grant came out around late 96, and I worked in the Arcadia Fair Forest community as a community relations officer, community police. We called them resident deputies back then. I stayed with the Sheriff's Office until 2000 and then had an opportunity to go to the Highway Patrol. I was stationed in Greenville initially and then got transferred to Spartanburg, and I stayed with the Highway Patrol until 22 when I retired. My career went through several different areas. I rode a motorcycle for the patrol. Then I went into public relations and community relations in 2008, where I went up to the rank of lieutenant. When I retired, I was executive commander and lieutenant over community relations, community outreach, public information, the Department of Education, freedom of information, a lot of different things that it entailed. When I retired, I went to work for American Services as director of training over in Greenville, and then they decided to sell the company after Mr. Harrison passed away that year. And the Highway Patrol called me back and asked me would I be willing to return to the Highway Patrol as community outreach coordinator, and I really functioned as community outreach coordinator for all the Department of Public Safety. I did that until I resigned on June the 2nd to seek the office of the sheriff, and we announced on June 3rd that I would be running. My wife and I currently live in Pauline, South Carolina. I've been down there for 21 years. We have 3 adult children. One still left in college, but I'm just really looking forward to the race and where we're at.
So the ties run deep to the upstate. Our first question for you, why are you running for sheriff?
That's really a simple question. I've answered that one time and time again. So as I said, I was born and raised in Spartanburg County up in Inman, and now I live down in the southern part of the county in in Pauline. And, I was born and raised here in this county. We raised our children in this county, and ultimately my grandchildren are likely to be raised in this county. So I have a vested interest on where this county is going to go into the future. And I don't think a lot of people realize the role that a sheriff's office plays when it comes to quality of life across this county for everybody that not only is just visiting the county, but people that live here that are looking to potentially make this their home. I wanted to be part of that, and it just really kind of has driven me to make the decision to run for sheriff. My heart just really got burdened to run, and then unfortunately with the circumstances that have taken place, it just happened a little bit quicker than we thought it was going to happen.
For those who don't know you, and I know you kind of mentioned it somewhat redundant, what qualifies you for this position?
I have a wide range of experience. Obviously, I started at the sheriff's office, so I have a strong understanding, and we did things a lot different back when I was a resident deputy. We actually were assigned investigations, more of your crimes that happen under $2,000, like car break-ins and things that were stolen from people's houses, malicious damage to property. So having that experience, helps you with those gains. But then going to the patrol and moving up through the ranks on the patrol, there's a process to getting promoted. You have to go through, different interviews, and you have to go through different processes to attain each rank. And there's leadership classes that you take that are building you and preparing you for that next step. And, it's the culmination of my entire career. Plus, I've been in business for myself also, and we've been very, very successful in business. And, leadership is what it's going to boil down to when it comes to, running for this position, because a sheriff does not have to know every aspect of what's taking place within that office, because a sheriff ultimately functions as a CEO. And very few CEOs, if any, know everything. It's about who you put around you and making the decisions on who you're going to have around you collectively to make those decisions. I just recently heard this said that CEOs don't need 4.0s, and I truly believe that. It's those people that you put around you in your circle that are going to determine your success ultimately.
Obviously, with some knowledge, as that's where you came from, what do you know about the current Sheriff's Department situation, and what changes do you seek to make?
You know, I was asked this at a town hall meeting last night. That's really a great question. And I actually was asked this when I was out door knocking this week, meeting voters. And a gentleman asked me, what are your top 3 priorities on day one? And then in a town hall, they said, what do you plan to accomplish in your first 100 days? And it really boils down to just 3 things when it comes right down to it. You know, number one is all about accountability. People in Spartanburg County want to see the sheriff and the incoming sheriff being held accountable. And in order to be held accountable, you have to want to be held accountable. You got to put people around you that don't have a problem saying, hey, you're wrong. You need to look at this a different way. And that's the kind of leadership that I'm going to put around me, is those that are going to be willing to step up. And it happens at all levels. You know, even the youngest officers, if they see things that they think are not being handled a certain way. And I know people think that that's a myth, that you're not going to listen to somebody that just graduated the academy. But you have to understand, today, as a leader within an agency, you're dealing with 4 distinct generations of people. You've got your boomers, you got your Gen X, you got your millennials, and you got your Gen Z. And as a leader, you have to figure out how you're going to communicate with every level and ensure that you're getting the same result from each level. So why are we not taking into account what somebody very young that may just be fresh out of the academy, they may have ideas or they may see something, and if they pass it up the chain, we need to address that. So accountability ultimately starts with me, and then it has to be passed down all the way through the entire agency, and it's really easy. There's 3 C's that I talk about with accountability. It's communication and consequence. Clarity is simply making sure that they understand what our expectations are, that it's clear, they know how to move forward, there's no questions on what our expectation is. The second part of that is communication. That's constantly communicating within the agency from top to bottom to ensure that everybody knows what is taking place within that agency, because if you have misunderstanding, it builds mistrust. So we have to ensure that that doesn't happen. And then finally, it's the consequence. We're going to celebrate our wins. We're going to celebrate our successes within that agency, but we're going to come up with a fair disciplinary system that is going to be based on integrity and honesty, that we're going to be able to treat everybody exactly the same. And if one person is involved in an incident and another person is involved in the exact same incident, that you have consistency between those 2 incidents as far as how discipline is handled. And again, it's going to be handled in a very fair and consistent manner. The second part of that is the transparency. We have to be transparent. People are screaming for that in society right now. We hear it over and over and over again, and so many politicians, they talk about it as they're going into office, and then they get in the office and they don't deliver on that. Some of my campaign promises that I have made is that we're going to establish on the website a budget link, and we will post the budget quarterly on there so the people of Spartanburg County can actually physically see where their money's going to, line item by line item, so they understand it's their money and they have a right to understand exactly where that money is going. The second part of that is the doing audit reports. I want to do audit reports on a yearly basis. So say at the end of 26, by March the 31st of 27, we will have an audit report posted that's going to give an outline of what we did, how we performed at the sheriff's office over the year, where our successes were and where we need to improve, and what goals do we have to make those improvements to be more consistent with that. That's something that we're going to ensure that we put out every year. Again, that will be put out on the website for the public to see. And then the other part of that, a lot of people ask me, why did I make the decision to release my personnel file going through this process? And it's very, very simple. As I was thinking about transparency and what transparency really meant and what people talk about, I was like, how can I, as a candidate, prove to the people of Spartanburg County that this is how I'm going to function as a leader? So I felt the only way that I could do that was to go through the process just as anybody would, and I FOIA'd my personnel file, a redacted version. Anybody FOIAs it, they're going to get the exact same version, and put it out there for the entire public to see, and also release my military records also. I think that's what true transparency is about. Transparency is merely a word until you take the time to put it into action. And then the last part of that is simply this: we have to change the culture within that agency, and that culture gets changed through servant leadership. People talk about servant leadership all the time, but they really don't know how to employ servant leadership. Servant leadership is, coming alongside your people and making sure that they understand you support them no matter what. And there's a kind of I use this a lot, but I've learned this from a pastor many years ago, but servant leadership is really about clarity balanced with grace. and expectation balanced with accountability. If you have clarity and you do not have grace, then what you're doing is you're building an authoritarian type of leadership, almost a tyranny within your agency, and that's never going to work. That's the do as I say, not as I do type of mentality. That's never going to translate to those men and women that work at that office. And then if you do not have accountability built in with expectation, you develop empathy. And when you begin developing empathy within your agency, those people are going to, they're never going to be happy. Your retention and attrition rates are going to remain the same. And it doesn't matter what kind of raises you ever get people. They're never going to stay there just solely based on money. I've been part of this with the Highway Patrol. And we studied this. We got 39% in raises, I believe, over a 3-year time frame. And we sat and watched our attrition rates and retention rates basically remain the same. They steadied for a little bit. But what I have found through exit interviews and things of that nature, people do not leave agencies for money. They leave agencies as a result of leadership. So those 3 things, accountability, transparency, and changing the culture, are going to be the most important things. But the key is this: once you've done those 3 things, you're going to begin naturally rebuilding trust within the community, because the community is going to see a different level of service, because what is taking place is a transformation is happening from the inside out within that agency. And when that transformation begins to happen, you're going to have other people looking at our agency saying, man, they've got something special going on there, and they're going to want to be part of it irregardless of what the money is.
Interim Sheriff Stevens has dropped Operation Rolling Thunder, something that probably is very close to home for you. Do you agree with that decision? Why or why not?
Yes, I do agree with it. There's so many civil liabilities that come along with Rolling Thunder that you're putting the sheriff's office and you're putting the county taxpayers' money at risk. It's just not physically responsible to continue to do that. When you start bringing people in from all over the state to operate Rolling Thunder like they have in the past, there's a tremendous burden when it comes to cost on what you're spending with those agencies here. And again, you also run into the issue of these agencies are coming here and they may have different policies within their agencies, and they may function a different way outside of the policy of the sheriff's office that could cause liabilities that you're not even aware of. And the other part of this is when Rolling Thunder first took place many, many years ago, when it first happened, I think it was great what they did. It was great that they got those drugs. But if you go back and you look over the years, you've seen it, continue to go down over the years. There's not been nearly as successful. And I've said this several times too, the communication link between the folks that are out there doing these type of crimes and operating these type of businesses, as soon as they got out there with Rolling Thunder, they knew, and they started planning alternate routes around Spartanburg County. So the bang for the buck was not there anymore, especially when you started looking at the civil liability was attached. And you've seen that time and time again with different things that have come up as a result. I think a greater way of handling that is going to be have a dedicated team of people out there, 2 to 3 officers out there, that's what they do throughout the year doing interdiction. We still have a responsibility to be out there and getting those drugs off our roads, because the reality is this. A lot of people don't think about it, but Spartanburg County is the corridor to the south. You have Interstate 85 and Interstate I-26 right here at your studios running through the middle of our county. There's no telling what's going up and down our interstates. If people actually knew what was going up and down our interstates, they'd probably not want to travel on the interstate. So we do have a responsibility to have teams out there that are going to be trying to intercept and utilizing interdiction to stop that type of trafficking from taking place.
The sheriff is often one of the most powerful, if you will, positions in the county. And we've seen numerous examples across the state of an abuse of this power. What would you say to residents of Spartanburg County about how you will treat this responsibility and not abuse the power?
Absolutely. That's a wonderful question. I really appreciate you asking that. And I kind of addressed that just a little while ago when we were talking. And I apologize if I got a little bit ahead, but in order to be held accountable, you have to want to be held accountable. That's what it all boils down to. And you have to make selections on your command staff that are not based on friendships, that are not based on doing anybody any favors. You have to make decisions on your command staff for people that are willing to step up and tell you, Bill, you're doing it the wrong way. And you have to be ready to receive that and understand that. I have, and I've talked about this in other interviews, I have what I've called my 3 deadly sins when it comes to men and women that have worked underneath. I hate to ever use the term anybody that worked for me. I rarely will ever say that, so I want to make sure that I put that in context. But it is people that I've been in charge of leadership. And I've made it very clear to them that, number 1, don't ever break the law. Don't ever lie to me. Number 2, don't ever break the law. Number 3, don't ever do anything that brings any ill repute on the agency. Don't bring any ill repute on the state of South Carolina. And then finally, don't do anything that affects the people that we serve. All three of those that have one thing in common. They're a choice. They've made a choice to do something wrong. We all make mistakes in life, and I'm telling you, I will make mistakes. But the best part of making a mistake is you can own that mistake, and you can learn from that mistake, and you can grow from that mistake. And I will never make a promise to the people of Spartanburg that we're not going to make mistakes. We are. We're human. That's part of leadership. But you learn from it, you grow from it, and you move on from it. If you don't learn and grow from it, then it's a complete failure, and we cannot have that. What I can promise everybody in the Spartanburg County is that there's no way I will ever make a bad decision. That's another reason that I released my personnel file. It gave a clear-cut view into what my career has looked like, and it should serve as an example to the people of Spartanburg County when they're making those decisions on August the 5th or August 21st when early voting starts, of who they need to be choosing. Because one of those other reasons that I released that personnel file was so they would be able to look at that and see, this is how he has represented himself in his career, and they should be able to see that I'm not going to bring any ill repute on this agency. I've been held to the highest standard at the highest level within the state of South Carolina, and I will continue to do that for the people of Spartanburg County.
Thank you, Mr. Rhyne. WSPA Plus will be right back after this quick commercial break. Hello and welcome to WSPA Plus. 7 News is your local election headquarters. We are here today interviewing the one of many candidates for the position for Spartanburg County Sheriff. I'm joined now with Bill Rhyne. We appreciate you being here with us today. Are you ready to get into the later leg of the questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What kind of relationship, if any, do you have with the sheriff's deputies and those who would serve under you? What is your message for them?
I know a lot of the deputies just because we cross paths in general. Now, I don't know a majority of the deputies. Obviously, I've been gone from the sheriff's office for 25 years at this point in time. So other than crossing paths with them when we're eating at restaurants and things like that, but there are a handful that are still there that were there when I was there that I do still talk to. But the biggest thing, it's just clearing up of the rumors. There's so many rumors out there when they're looking at the different candidates, because it means so much to those officers down there. Who's going to be the next sheriff in Spartanburg County? And the rumors that need to be cleared up. There's so many things out there saying that I'm going to try to come in there and turn that into the highway patrol, and that's an absolute false statement. That's not something I would ever do, and I fully understand that the highway patrol has a very objective role in the state of South Carolina. We have to be the same from the coast all the way to the mountains. And that's not necessarily the same. As far as the law, it has to remain black and white, whether you're with the sheriff's office or whether you're with the highway patrol. But the way I see the sheriff's office, they have a much more subjective role in how they do things, because they're not dealing with the same day-to-day, the traffic enforcement, working of collisions, dealing with those type of things. They're dealing with everything under the sun when it comes to the law. And there's been concerns that we wouldn't have them, we wouldn't allow them to have tattoos anymore, that they'd have to cover them up. That's never something that has ever come out of my mouth. The other thing that has been said, that we would no longer allow beards. Again, that's never anything that has come out of my mouth. That's just false rumors that are being spread out there, thinking that I'll come in there and run it the same way. Now, am I going to have a beard? No, probably not, unless we have a challenge of a no-shave November in support of the cancer awareness. I may do it at that point in time, but I've never really had one in my life, so I'm not planning on doing that now. But I understand that an officer that has a beard or an officer that has a tattoo is likely in many of our communities in Spartanburg County going to be more well received when they go into that community than, say, myself. If I was still a trooper walking in there in a starch uniform with a smoky on, they're not going to receive them the same way that they would receive me at that point in time. They're going to have a better communication line with them. And, being over-recruiting with the Highway Patrol and the brief time that I had some of the employment responsibilities, one of the things that we were learning as we were doing research is we have to change in law enforcement. I go back to my earlier statement of the different generations that you're supervising. And, I talked about the 4 generations that you have to supervise. And the reality is this, that when you start talking to Gen Z and you start talking to millennials, they don't think anything of tattoos. They don't think anything of people having beards. It's accepted. It's something that's different, and that's what happens. Things change with time. As a leader, you have to respect that. You have to understand that, and you have to understand that there's only so much control that you have when it comes to pay. It's dependent on county council getting that pay to get it where it needs to be. But where you do have control is when you allow them to do those type of things. And that gives them, it helps the morale at the end of the day. That's what they want to have. And, I want them to understand that I'm coming in there to be a servant leader to them. When you start looking at how a sheriff's office truly should function, a common thing that they're going to hear from me is go be an oak. And that sounds kind of crazy. And my wife and I were actually working out one day, and she made a comment, and I just landed on it. And I laid in the bed thinking about it. And the best way I can describe how a sheriff's office should work is if you could imagine an oak tree, and you're looking at an oak tree out in the field, and it's a very hot summer day, and you've been working and you're ready to take a break, and you go sit down underneath that oak tree to get cool. That's where people are going to be. But what's the most important part of that oak tree? Well, it's the roots. The roots are what provide all the nutrients to that tree. It what provides the stability to that tree. It was what ensured that that tree remained standing. Well, those roots, that's the sheriff. The sheriff has to be that root, and he's unseen. He's underground. That's not to say that the sheriff's not going to be part of the community, but that's where you start. And then as you start up that trunk, you start looking at your chief deputies. And then as you continue up the trunk, you start looking at your captains and your lieutenants. And then as your branches start to fall out, you start seeing your lieutenants, your first sergeants, and so on, and then your branches. But the key there is understanding that what provides us the support, what provides us the shade and what provides us the coolness on that summer day are all those leaves. And all those leaves are those deputies. That's what they represent. And that's the perfect picture of what true servant leadership has to be. You have to be supporting them no matter what, pouring into them at all times, coming along beside them and making them understand that when somebody looks at that oak tree, when they see that beauty, they're looking at those leaves through the different times of the year when they change colors and all that. But that's what provides the coolness. That's what provides the relief. They're the ones that are going to be providing that. It's not the sheriff. It's not the command staff. And if you don't pour into your people with that mentality, you're never going to be successful as a servant leader.
We've got a couple minutes left. What would you describe your relationship with the members of Spartanburg County Council?
I really don't know anybody with county council as it stands right this minute. I know there's a lot of things that have gone on with county council, but you're going to have to be able to have a positive relationship with them. You're going to be able to have to go in there and work through different issues with them and come to a common ground, which I think is very much doable. That one of the things that I'm uniquely qualified with is for communicating with others. That's what I've been basically my entire career. I've worked in community policing, community relations, and public relations. So I'm uniquely qualified to have those conversations and to have those opportunities to sit down and speak with them, either one-on-one or collectively, because I think everybody has a common goal at the end of the day, and that's to make Spartanburg County the best county in the state of South Carolina, both from as far as people moving here, because the reality at the end of the day, people are coming here every day from around the world. It's not just coming here from, inside the United States. We've got a massive infrastructure. We've got businesses coming here all the time. We just had one come into the old Kohler plant. That's a multi-billion-dollar investment in the Spartanburg County. We have the assets here to do things that nobody else can. And the reality is this, if Spartanburg County is becoming a destination for so many people to move here worldwide, why is the sheriff's office not a destination? We don't want that to be a stepping stone. And you have to communicate that with county council and make county council understand that we've got to take care of these deputies. We've got to make sure that they have all the assets that they need to be successful. But I feel confident that I can have those relationships and I can have those talks and those communications with county council to attain what we need.
My final question, what do you know about the Sheriff's Department budget and how that aligns with the needs of the department?
I've looked at the budget and I've looked at where it's at, and we actually had a conversation, myself and a couple of other candidates, and the budget, obviously, it needs to be raised in Spartanburg County because the deputies do need more money. But I will go back and I will say that money does not solve retention issues. Money does not solve morale. That is the last thing that's going to solve that, and people will not come for money. But that's one of those questions. It's going to be a difficult conversation that we have to have with county council. But a lot of people have said, would you ever look at federal grants and things of that nature to fund things? And the big problem with looking at federal grants is there are so many requirements that become attached to federal grants. And if you buy into those federal grants, then all of a sudden you run the risk of having the federal government telling you how you're going to have to function your agency. I just feel like Spartanburg County has such a strong infrastructure at this point in time and the way we're growing and with all the businesses that are coming here, that if we put our heads together and we come to a common agreement on things, that we should be able to fund the sheriff's office in any way to ensure that we're successful moving into the future.
Candidate Rhyne, before I let you go, your website for those who want to learn a little bit more about you.
Yes, ma'am. You can look it up at BillRhyneForSheriff.com, and I warn the public when they go look at it. I mean, I really want you to, but it's very long, and it's long because when I wrote my platforms out and I sat down and began to write my platforms, I have objective plans written in there and exactly how we're going to do everything. And understand this. Your platforms are not a day one plan. Your platforms are what your vision is for the sheriff's office into the future. And when you go to my website and you read my website, I'm just asking you to take that time. It's going to take you a little bit of time, but it'll give you a very clear picture of what my plans are moving forward.
We appreciate your time so much, Candidate Rhyne, and we will have those links to your website on WSPA Plus as well as WSPA.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.